Warning, this video contains very disturbing subject matter and also graphic imagery. If you are sensitive to topics such as death, eating disorders, drug abuse, domestic violence, child abuse, sexual abuse, war and disfigurement, please do not watch this video as this video contains all of those topics.
I'm back with yet another iceberg? What? Yeah, it is true. I am back with yet another PSA iceberg. I really enjoy making these videos and I wanted to make another iceberg. So basically this time I'm going to be covering a smaller iceberg, but I'm going to be going more in depth about each entry on this iceberg. This iceberg is linked down below in the description, and apparently the person that created this iceberg is a fan of the channel. So hello, if you're there. The creators made this iceberg into 5 different tiers, and as we go down the tiers, the PSAs get more and more disturbing. Before we get into the iceberg, please make sure to check out my Discord down below in the description if you want to talk about anything, meet some awesome people, or even talk to PSA enthusiasts like myself. And also in the Discord server, you can receive exclusive new updates and new videos and all that jazz. With that out of the way, let's get into the iceberg. Tier 1. Dumb Ways to Die. Dumb Ways to Die is a 2012 PSA released by the Australian company Metro. The PSA in question is said to be the most shared PSA on the internet of all time. That is extremely impressive, and honestly I can see that being true as this PSA was everywhere in 2012. To be fair though, I do live in the same state that this PSA is meant for, as Metro Trains is the public transport system in Victoria. The PSA has gained over 230 million views on YouTube, and it was also the most awarded campaign in the history of Cairns, winning 28 Lions Awards. The PSA itself is a simple animated PSA with a song in the background singing about how there are so many ways to die. The PSA gets the message across by the end of the PSA, where the last few dumb ways to die involve trains. By the way, the song itself was actually released on iTunes, and a couple of days after the PSA came out, it became #1 on the charts in a few different countries. Dumb Ways to Die then spawned a phone game into existence after how well the PSA performed, as well as a sequel in 2014. The only other campaign that I know that's had this much success is the Vince and Larry PSA campaign. But the PSA is still remembered by a lot of people as it went viral, and even down here in Victoria you can still see print PSAs with the characters from the PSA. Literally, Dumb Ways to Die down here was one of those things that you could not avoid around the time of its peak. Also, personally, I played the game way too much when it was a big thing. Vince and Larry PSA campaign. This is a PSA campaign from the American company Ad Council in partnership with the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. The campaign started airing in 1985 when seatbelt use was only at the percentage of 14% and managed to push seatbelt use up to 79% when the campaign ended in 1997. There are roughly about 42 PSAs that the campaign made and aired over their 12-year run. And to say that the PSAs left an impact on people was an understatement. The campaign spawned a TV short that aired in 1989, and then a toy line that started in 1991, and even a TV show based on the toys. I've talked about this PSA campaign thousands of times, and because it's such an amazing PSA campaign, as every PSA is really well done and very effective. I Saw You Willie. A PSA from the British company NSPCC released in 2015. The PSA shows a scenario where 2 kids are taking photos of random things such as a dog and Alex messing with his hair. That's until Sam has the idea to send a photo of Alex's willy, and they do, and the image ends up being shared around to everyone in the neighborhood. Alex even receives messages from people talking about his willy, such as one kid saying your willy's rubbish. Imagine someone actually saying that, it'd be kind of hilarious. But at the end of the PSA, Alex ends up at his grandma's place where she sees the photo. The PSA is trying to tell the viewer to be careful about what you post online, as anyone can easily share it around. Honestly, finding information about this PSA was actually nearly impossible itself. There is a wiki on the PIF wiki about this PSA, but the only thing it says is just, it legit describes the PSA, like what happens in the PSA. That's it. Don't Bring Me Back. Don't Bring Me Back is yet another British PSA, but this one was released from the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs in 2008. The whole PSA is about how you shouldn't bring back food from other countries. It does this by showing puppets of different foods coming out of suitcases to sing a song about how you shouldn't bring the foods back. The foods that come up as puppets are mainly meats and dairy products such as a lobster, sausages, a block of cheese and some milk. This is yet another PSA that's really hard to find information about, unfortunately. Everything is Not Awesome. A well-known PSA released in 2014 around the same time as the Lego movie did. The PSA is directly targeting Lego as at the time they were still partnering with Shell, which is a company known for their petrol, but they're also known for their oil spills which ends up affecting sea life. They show a bunch of LEGO characters in the Arctic getting flooded with oil, as a slow cover of Everything is Awesome is playing in the background. The message of the PSA is delivered at the end when everything is flooded besides a Lego shell flag. Greenpeace went in depth on their website to why they actually created this PSA. The company said that every company has a responsibility to choose its partners and suppliers ethically. Lego says it wants to leave a better world for children and has a progressive environmental policy. But it's partnered with Shell, one of the biggest polluters on the planet, now threatening the Arctic. So Greenpeace really wanted Lego to ditch their partnership with Shell, and what happened after this PSA? Lego listened, they actually ditched their partnership with Shell. A funny fact about this PSA is that after it was uploaded, it got taken down because of a copyright claim for the song in the PSA, even though it was a cover. Shows how broken YouTube's copyright system really is. Pip the dog. This is an Aussie PSA made by RSPCA, which was released in 2003. The PSA itself follows a dog as it sits on a footpath in the city. The dog tries to get money off of people by doing various things, such as a sign saying "I'll fetch for $1" and a lemonade stand. This is until at the end of the PSA where the dog's lying down on a step that a man comes up and drops a $5 note as well as a few coins in his bowl. I hate that there's no information about this PSA because this is one I actually grew up with. It's honestly just a wholesome PSA in my eyes. I Am Astar. I Am Astar is a Canadian PSA from the War Amputations of Canada in 1984. The PSA has a character called Astar going through various obstacles on a planet he lives on called Planet Danger. There are many things such as saws, live electrical wires, as well as other things. By the end of the PSA, Astar's arm gets cut off, and as they put their arm back on, they tell us that they can put their arm back on, but we can't, so we should play safe. There is a second Astar PSA released in the year 2000, which is basically the same thing, but worse. The PSA is full CGI, and dated CGI to say the least. It literally looks like a game from the original PlayStation, and also for some reason Astar looks worse now and sounds a lot different.
I am Astar, a robot. I can put my arm back on.
I am Astar, a robot from Planet Danger.
This 2000 PSA wasn't received nearly as well, and I can honestly see why, because it's just a dated mess. House Hippo. Another Canadian PSA, but this one was released in 1999 from the company Concerned Children's Advertisers. This PSA shows off the fictional animal of a house hippo and how they live. The narrator talks about how they can be found throughout Canada and the eastern United States, and how house hippos sleep on a nest of lost mittens. The message of the PSA is delivered to the viewer at the end, and a new narrator talks about how the house hippo looked real, and that you shouldn't believe everything you see on television and to ask questions about what you saw. While I do know that this PSA didn't actually work for kids because they didn't listen at the end of the PSA and they actually thought the house hippo was real for the longest time. Smokey Bear PSAs. This is an American campaign from Ad Council that started as early as 1942 when the US government lost the rights to use the Disney character Bambi for their forest fire PSAs. The whole PSA campaign is known for the well-known slogan, which is "Only you can prevent forest fires." A lot of PSAs have been released under this campaign and are still being released by Ad Council to this day. The most well-known Smokey Bear PSA by far is definitely the "If You Knew It Was Me" PSA, which is also their most disturbing one. The PSA in question actually got remade because of the controversy with how disturbing the PSA was, and I can see why. If you freeze frame the original PSA when the skin suit's being taken off, you get some nightmare fuel. But in the second version, it isn't as disturbing at all, and also Smokey actually looks different at the end of the second version compared to the first one. Smokey has more Winnie the Pooh vibes in the second version. Besides that PSA, the whole campaign is the longest running PSA campaign of all time. Michael Jordan. Ah, yes. This meme-worthy PSA. I think everyone knows this PSA, even if you don't know much about PSAs at all. I haven't even gone down that rabbit hole. Obviously, the Stop It, Get Some Help line has become a massive meme on the internet, and people would know this PSA just from that line alone. Countless people have talked about this PSA and how weird it is that Michael Jordan had to come out from McDonald's to talk about teen drug use. To say that the PSA is weird is an understatement, but as the actual PSA goes, it's honestly pretty boring. Michael just rambles on and on for 2 minutes until the meme-worthy line comes at the end of the PSA. Tier 2. Snake. Snake is a PSA from the company Partnership for a Drug-Free America, released in 1986. The PSA is probably one of the most well-known anti-drug PSAs of the 80s, and I can honestly see why. We follow a drug dealer as they're talking to the viewer about how you can easily get addicted to drugs, and you'll do anything to get more. As he's talking to the viewer about this, the man slowly turns into a human-snake hybrid, until at the end of the PSA he has scaly skin and even pronounces his S's like a snake. Not even joking, it's full on like. Apparently the actor that played the drug dealer was Keith Amos, and he's known for being the character Ziggy in Family Matters. This PSA was one of many PSAs from Partnership for a Drug-Free America that just try to scare the viewer into not doing drugs. Also, with this PSA, it became more and more well known because of people like JonTron that covered the PSA in the past. Also, it actually became less scary to people because JonTron made fun of it and pointed out how ridiculous it was. Also, I will never get over the fact that this Nate guy has a villain wiki page. Lessons from our neighborhood. This is a PSA campaign from the company Youth Ambassadors KC, and they're all meant to be like Sesame Street, even down to having puppets that look like they were built by Jim Henson's Creature Shop. All three of these PSAs focus on different topics such as starvation, gun crime, and drug abuse. With the starvation PSA called Hunger, it's all about a child talking about how they avoid feeling hungry when there's no food to eat because their mother's out working 3 jobs. In the gun crime PSA called Duck, Dodge, and Roll, it's about a lesson being told to another kid on how you can avoid getting shot. The last PSA called Overdose, which is about drug use, follows a kid learning a lesson by another puppet like the Duck, Dodge, and Roll PSA. But in this PSA, the puppet is teaching the lesson to know what an overdose looks like because their kid's mother is abusing heavy drugs. All of the PSAs have the same kind of format where a song's being sung about the subject matter, and they all end with a quote from a child that had to learn the same lesson as the PSA. It's mainly the quote at the end of the PSA that makes these PSAs disturbing for me. Also, it could be the fact that the PSAs are covering such a disturbing subject matter in a light-hearted tone that makes it a little bit disturbing, but I don't know. Scream. Scream is a British PSA from the Samaritans that was released in 1989. It follows a woman in a light blue room where she's trying to talk to the camera, but all that's coming out is distorted guitar sounds. It keeps on going as she starts to get upset and starts breaking down as she's trying to talk but she can't. She ends up breaking down when the text the Samaritans understand fades in, as more lighthearted music fades in when the text does. There isn't really too much to say about this PSA, but the distorted guitar sounds when she's talking can be seen as quite disturbing. Train. A 2007 PSA from Ad Cancel in America depicts a man on a track as a train's approaching. The man's talking to the viewer about global warming and how the irreversible consequences are 30 years away. He then goes on to say that it won't affect him as he walks away, and a little girl standing on the tracks behind him as the train's about to run the little girl over. Text comes up saying that there's still time to fight global warming. The PSA itself isn't actually that disturbing, but I think it's the open vagueness that this PSA leaves is what people would find disturbing about it. Singing Cowboy. This 2007 PSA from the American company Truth follows 2 men setting up a campfire on a street in New York. The 2 men are sitting down and singing a song about how you don't always die from tobacco. One of the men actually has a hole in their neck from the effects of smoking and even gets to sing a bit of the song to get the message across that you might not die from tobacco, but you can still suffer the side effects. This PSA actually got nominated for Outstanding Commercial at the Emmys, but it unfortunately didn't win. Only one PSA has ever won Outstanding Commercial at the Emmys, and we'll talk about that later. The reason why this PSA may be disturbing to viewers is seeing someone that has suffered the side effects of smoking. Icons. A 2006 PSA from the American company California Department of Public Health. Also, this PSA is actually directed by Rocky Morton, the same person who directed the Super Mario Bros. Movie in 1993. The PSA itself has changing characters and scenes as they talk about how tobacco companies show a false reality to their products. Scenes and characters keep on changing until at the end of the PSA it changes to a man in a wheelchair talking about how you can end up like him if you keep smoking. Also, the more I think about this PSA, the more I believe my theory about it to be true. So for my theory on this PSA, I think each scene is meant to represent a certain tobacco company and how they show their products to the public. In the first scene, we see a Camel talking to the viewer, representing Camel cigarettes because it's in the name and it's in the branding of the cigarettes. A cowboy then shows up, which is meant to represent Marlboro cigarettes, a company that usually advertise their products with cowboys smoking their cigarettes. The next scene's representing Cool cigarettes because their theme was green and playing up how cool smoking cigarettes were. But with the last scene, I do believe that it's meant to represent Pall Mall cigarettes. Also, I did hear one theory that the last scene's just meant to represent how tobacco companies try to show off their product, but I don't believe that to be true because the rest of the scenes are trying to show different companies and how they represent their own cigarettes. Unsweetened Truth. Unsweetened Truth is a 2011 PSA from Truth, and it follows a parade float of people that have suffered the effects of smoking singing a song about the flavors of tobacco. The song itself in the PSA is extremely catchy and it really shows the viewer how many different tobacco flavors there are. The most disturbing part of this PSA is just the fact you get to see how people are affected by smoking. Kinda similar to the Singing Cowboy PSA to be completely honest, but this PSA was filmed on Hollywood Boulevard instead of in New York. Save Ralph. This PSA released in 2021, made by the Humane Society of the United States, follows the daily life of a rabbit voiced by Taika Waititi. The rabbit, named Ralph, is a testing rabbit that constantly gets put into testing facilities to test new products on. Ralph's talking to the audience in an interview style, talking about how he lives his life and talks about the different things to do with animal testing and how many rabbits die getting tested on. We do eventually see Ralph getting tested on, as the other rabbits in the facility are aware of the camera crew as well and actually beg to be saved. The PSA ends with the text saying that no animal should suffer and die in the name of beauty. It's really the end message of this PSA that makes it more disturbing, but I'm not saying that there isn't anything that's disturbing during the PSA, especially when Ralph's being tested on. That's quite a disturbing scene. Also, if you have a sharp eye for detail in this PSA, you can actually see that Ralph had a family and all of them ended up dying from being testers. Scavengers. The PSA released in 1987 from the UK company Lynx. It follows a fly flying around the city until it gets into a room with a lot of rich people, where we see it swing back and forth from the fly's perspective to the rich people. We see the flies nibbling on something until a rich couple pulls back a fur coat and we see a bunch of guts underneath the coat with heaps of flies and maggots on it. The PSA ends with the text saying when animals are killed for their fur, two kinds of scavengers move in. The difference is the flies don't know better. I guess what makes this PSA disturbing to people is the guts coming out of the coat at the end of the PSA, but to me this one's just dated and corny. Tier 3. Body Bag. Body Bag is a PSA from Truth released in the year 2000. The PSA follows a group of people unloading body bags out of a van and a truck in front of a tobacco company's building, and we can see that they're trying to rush them out. We find out that the amount of bodies that were dumped at the building was 1,200, and that's the number of people that die from smoking every day. We find that out at the end of the PSA, where the message is delivered to the viewer that smoking can easily take your life, as it already takes 1,200 people's lives a day. It's funny because this fact is even talked about in the 2006 movie Thank You for Smoking. Swim. This is a RSPCA PSA from the UK that was released in the year 1995 and only shown in cinemas for 15 plus rated films. We follow a dog's perspective as the owner is going to take them for a swim. The PSA is being narrated from the dog's perspective, and the PIF wiki says that it's meant to be James McAvoy or Ewan McGregor, and I don't think it's Ewan McGregor. I actually believe it's James McAvoy because you listen to him pronouncing different words. Say if you look at him like on the Graham Norton show or something like that where he's talking normally, and you listen to this PSA, they sound very similar, especially how they pronounce certain words. Like, listen to James McAvoy pronouncing the word director. It sounds exactly like this dog.
Quite often work with the same guy, Jamie Lloyd, a director who's just wonderful, so I'm very lucky on stage.
My brother and I run down the towpath. We're happy to be running because we don't get taken out as often as we used to.
But basically in the rest of the PSA, the dog and its owner end up near a river as the owner ties up the dogs and puts them in a sack. Also, is it just me or is this the same river in the My Little Puppy PSA? Might be just me, but it looks like it. The PSA would be disturbing for some people because of how the owner's putting the dogs into the sack and how the PSA heavily implies that the dogs are going to get thrown into the river. Also, apparently there was an alternate version of this PSA where they just changed the end text to fit the Christmas season. Exploding Tiger Trick. A PSA from 1996 made by the company EIA in the UK. In this PSA we see some kind of magic trick where a magician puts a tiger into a box. The narrator talks about how India made a reserve to protect the remaining tigers, the national symbol of their country. The magician puts the tiger into the box and then he stabs a few swords into the box as the tiger's screaming. We see blood coming out of the box and the narrator comes back to say that one tiger is killed every day and that if this continues there'll be none left. When the narrator finishes, the magician opens the box to only see blood all over the box but no tiger. Text comes up saying tell the Indian government you don't want the tiger to disappear. Everybody knows. Everybody knows it's a PSA from the company Quitline in Australia, released in 2008. The whole PSA is a compilation of clips from their own company's clips to other companies' clips. When the PSA is playing, the song Everybody Knows from Leonard Cohen plays over the images we see in this PSA. All we see in the PSA is different things that people suffer with after smoking for a long time, and text comes up throughout the PSA saying everybody knows that smoking causes all these diseases, but you still smoke. By the way, this PSA aired during the day, so 9-year-old me must have had a field trip seeing this PSA. Have a break. This 2011 PSA from Greenpeace in the UK follows an office worker needing a break. The PSA imitates a Kit Kat commercial where the slogan is have a break, have a Kit Kat. But the man goes to pull out his Kit Kat and as he opens it we see an orangutan finger in the packet. Everyone else sees it except for him and his co-worker is in shock as he takes a bite out of the finger. The PSA shows text saying to give the orangutan a break as their rainforests are being cut down by companies that Nestle partners with to get palm oil for their chocolate. I think it's quite obvious why this PSA is on this list because it's pretty disturbing to see a man bite an orangutan's finger. Ben. An American PSA released in 2011 by the company Montana Meth Project tells the story of someone that got addicted to meth named Ben. The PSA has disturbing imagery to back up the narration where Ben's sister tells the events of Ben's addiction. We see how he had his first convulsions, ended up in hospital, and then tried to end himself because he thought he couldn't get rid of his meth addiction. The PSA ends with the sister talking to the viewer saying, "And this is what I said when he told me he was going to try meth," and all that follows is silence. A few PSAs from Montana Meth Project follow the same format, but I believe this PSA is the best one, with Deep End being a close contender. Is there anybody out there? Is There Anybody Out There is the first Samaritans PSA released in the year 1986. The PSA features the Pink Floyd song of the same name in the background, whilst we see a man trying to get through the wall. Maybe a reference to the album that this song's on? I don't know. As the man struggles to get through the wall, we can start to hear him screaming. The man ends up giving up trying to get through the wall as text "Yes, the Samaritans" fades in, answering the question, "Is there anybody out there?" The PSA itself is actually trying to answer the question if anybody's out there to help people with their mental struggles or depression, and I think it's fantastic. Welcome to the Battery. This is a 1988 PSA from the company Compassion in World Farming, or CIWF for short in the UK. The PSA follows a man talking to the viewer with a black background. He's talking about how you are being put into a certain system as he mentions cages and lanes, and as they're made for your safety. He then talks about how people are going to remove your teeth and nails as it reduces the possibility for cannibalism, and that it's in your interest to comply. The man tells us that this whole system is completely legal, and that you're a part of one of the most cost-effective systems that you should have no worries. We then see that chickens are being put into this system and that it's been happening with your approval. The PSA ends with the line, "Welcome to the Battery." I can see how the PSA is disturbing as it's very simple with just a black background with someone talking to the viewer, especially the imagery at the end of the PSA that definitely backs it up. Monsters. A 2012 PSA from the company Fragile Childhood in Finland tries to tackle how children see their parents when intoxicated. The PSA follows a few different scenarios where children see their parents as different things. We see children see their parents as a giant ugly rabbit, a grim reaper, a zombie, and a clown, as well as a few other things. The PSA ends with one kid seeing their father as a robber as they're putting their seatbelt on them. Text comes in saying, "How do our children see us when we've been drinking?" This PSA can be quite disturbing, but some people actually think it's one of the scariest PSAs of all time, and I'm glad that the Iceberg's creator actually doesn't see it as one of the most scariest PSAs of all time. I do want to mention that the print PSAs made for this PSA are actually better than the PSA itself in my opinion. I'm not going to show them here because YouTube doesn't like it, but they are really good. I recommend you go check them out. They are on the PIF wiki for this PSA. Countdown. Countdown is a PSA from the company Sear in the Netherlands. It was released in 1996 and it tells people not to mess with fireworks by counting down from 10. When the PSA is counting down, you can see two hands slowly lose fingers as the numbers go down, until there are eventually no fingers left at the end of the PSA. Text fades in at the end of the PSA saying "Only jerks mess with fireworks," which was actually the company's campaign they were running around this time. This is one PSA that's always on people's top scariest PSAs list, and I can see why a little bit, but after you watch it more than a couple of times, it kind of wears off. Tier 4. Point of View. This is a PSA released in the year 2018 from the American company Sandy Hook Promise. This Emmy-nominated PSA follows the perspective of a school kid going throughout their day, as we see how they're being treated by their peers. We see a few signs here and there, such as the kid's locker and a computer screen that the main character wants to shoot up the school. This all builds up until the end of the PSA, we see the kid bring a bag with a rifle in it to school. He looks at himself in the reflection of the school's trophies, and after that he storms into the theater with his rifle, telling everyone to look at him. Text fades in saying most people only notice a shooter once it's too late. See the signs and stop a shooting before it happens. Honestly, my favourite Sandy Hook Promise PSA, and it builds up the events in the PSA really well, not like the Evan PSA. But yeah, as I mentioned before, this PSA got nominated for an Emmy, and the year after, Sandy Hook Promise won an Emmy for Outstanding Commercial for their Back to School Essentials PSA. The only PSA ever to win Outstanding Commercial at the Emmys. Ventriloquist. A PSA from NSPCC in the UK released in the year 2004. We follow a ventriloquist as it controls a puppet of a young girl, being a metaphor for how child abuse can control the victims into not saying anything about it and acting differently. The PSA shows us a few different scenarios where it affects the young girl, such as at school not knowing the answer to a question, not going over to a friend's place and acting differently at the dinner table. The puppet's the main thing that disturbs me personally, and also the puppet was made by the British company called Asylum. They've done work for companies like Nike, and they even helped work on another NSPCC PSA. Rats. Rats is a PSA released by the Partnership for a Drug-Free Singapore in 1999. In the PSA, we see a man in chains as a narrator talks about how people used to be tortured by getting eaten alive by rats. We see the rats bite into the man as it's used as a metaphor for what heroin does to your body. Rats ends with the text, 4 out of 5 people who try heroin never escape. Heroin is a living hell. I don't have much to say about this PSA as it's quite disturbing to see rats eating a man alive. The Hostage. This PSA is from the French company En France et Partage, and it was released in 2006. The PSA follows a family of 3 eating at a dinner table until the mother slaps their son in the face and the father grabs the son by the ear. The father pulls him by the ear into a room as he starts whipping him with his belt until it fades the text. The text says that this is a dramatization. In reality, the victim's only 6 years old. It's a pretty disturbing PSA and it really shows how things can go from 0 to 100 in these scenarios. And also the end text that reveals that in reality there's a 6-year-old being abused is honestly upsetting. Listen. A 60-second long PSA from the American company No More made a PSA that aired at the time of the 2015 Super Bowl. It's supposed to be the first Super Bowl PSA that addresses domestic violence, and the PSA lets us listen to a real phone call to the authorities where a female pretends that she's ringing a pizza shop to try and get out of her abusive situation. The PSA visualizes a messy house with a sink full of dishes, a messy bed and a hole in a wall, as well as a few other things as we hear the phone call to get a good idea of why she's ringing the authorities. Text fades in at the end of the PSA saying that when it's hard to talk, it's up to us to listen.
I can honestly imagine this PSA disturbing viewers, as most people wouldn't expect a PSA like this during the Super Bowl because most people would just expect like Doritos ads and stuff like that.
Deep End. Deep End is a 2011 PSA from the Montana Meth Project that I actually mentioned earlier in this video. The PSA follows a girl looking into a mirror as someone assumed to be her narrates the PSA asking questions about what meth would make someone do. They end up saying, or if I had asked, can't you just stop doing meth? My mum wouldn't be asking. And after that, it's revealed that the girl we see in this PSA slit her wrist whilst on meth as their mother's trying to stop them. It's really the end of this PSA that I find to be quite disturbing, where you see the outcome of the girl's meth use. Nightmare. This is a Scottish PSA from the Scottish Office Fire Safety from 1995, and it shows the events of a man's nightmare where a house fire is occurring, as we see a photo of the man's family burning. We hear the kids screaming throughout the PSA, as the photo switches from being a normal photo to a video of the family begging for help as the man's trying to reach out to them. We see them disappear one by one until the man wakes up alone in his bed full of sweat. His alarm was beeping when he woke up, so he turns it off and grabs the photo of his family on his bedside table. The man looks at the photo, then holds it up against himself as the narrator tells the viewer to always check the smoke alarm and plan your escape or you might live to regret it.
I really think that this PSA is a great representation of how a nightmare would look. The way they use audio and visuals and stuff really does it well. It really makes you feel like that this is an actual nightmare going on.
Tier 5. You're the Guinea Pig. You're the Guinea Pig's a PSA from Partnership for a Drug-Free Singapore, released in 1999.
Also, this PSA is a personal favourite of mine for how it represents the drug ecstasy.
It shows a man being strapped down into a chair being tested on by a group of scientists. The scientists are testing the effects of ecstasy on a man whilst the narrator says no one knows how much brain damage ecstasy causes and that it's still being tested. You're the Guinea Pig ends with the line, take ecstasy and you're the guinea pig, as we see the man in the chair struggling to get out as the PSA fades to black.
It's just a masterpiece, absolute chef's kiss.
Jacqueline. This is a PSA released by the Texas Department of Transport in 2014. The PSA shows a woman holding up an old picture of herself before she got into a car accident caused by a drunk driver. She explains how she ended up in that situation and what happened to her. Until near the end of the PSA, she pulls down the photo to show how she looks now after the accident. Honestly, this PSA is just more depressing to me. I used to find it quite disturbing when you see her face, but the more you look into it, the more depressing it really is. I'm just glad that her story's actually been heard, because she got in the accident back in 1999, and then this PSA came out in 2004, and she also had an appearance on Oprah. Trapped. An Aussie PSA released in 2014 from the company MSWA, and it follows a person being trapped in a small enclosed area. We see them slipping as they're trying to get out and even panicking. They start to scream out for help as they're banging against one of the walls of the enclosed space. We then cut to someone looking at a photo of the person stuck in the small space as looking out at them. But it's finally revealed to us that the person stuck in the enclosed space is actually a person with multiple sclerosis, and that what we saw was a metaphor for what it feels like to have the condition.
By the way,
Multiple sclerosis is a disease that eats at your nerves and potentially gets rid of the link between your brain and your body. At the end of the PSA, the text comes up saying multiple sclerosis can trap you within your own body. Help us find a cure. Honestly, just the visuals of being someone stuck in an enclosed space like that, having no way out, is really disturbing to me. Haunted. Yet another Aussie PSA. But this PSA was released in 2005 from the company TAC. The PSA follows a man that constantly keeps seeing a child everywhere he goes, just staring at him. The man keeps getting older and older as he sees the child everywhere he goes. It keeps going on until the man ends up breaking down at his daughter's wedding after he sees the child in the mirror. We then see the reason why he keeps seeing the child everywhere he goes, and that's because he accidentally killed a child when drink driving. The text "you don't have to be a drunk to be a drink driver" comes up as we see the man upset at the same footy oval as the start of the PSA. This is yet another one of those PSAs I remember seeing when I was growing up, and this one has stuck with me the whole time. This is yet another PSA I remember seeing when I was growing up, and this is just one of those PSAs that you don't forget no matter how hard you try. It's a really disturbing but well done PSA, and it shows guilt in a very well done way. Nebraska Couple. Nebraska Couple is a PSA from Partnership for a Drug-Free America, released in 2006. The PSA plays a real phone call to 9/11 where Janelle and Michael get stuck in a blizzard, and they were high on meth and completely disoriented. At the end of the PSA, text comes up saying that they were later found frozen to death, and I believe that's what makes this PSA so disturbing. Mainly just the fact that this actually happened and that the couple ended up dying in a blizzard because they were on meth is what's really disturbing to me. Also, in the phone call, hearing the emotion of Michael's voice as he's scared and desperate to stay alive is really upsetting. This is just one of those PSAs I find to be more depressing than disturbing, but I can see why it disturbs people. Tentacle. This is a German PSA released in 2008 by the company Dunkelziffer. This PSA talks about the long-term effects of child abuse by using a tentacle as a metaphor for the events that the main character remembers. We follow a young girl with a tentacle staying on her as she grows up. The girl keeps getting older and older as the tentacle stays with her until death. The tentacle finally leaves when she passes away, as text fades in saying if sexually abused children never get help, they never get their trauma. The tentacle itself is just really disturbing, and I don't like seeing this stuff. Me and child abuse PSAs don't mix well. Torture by another name. A 2007 PSA from the company Helen Barmer Foundation in the UK depicts a woman in bed talking to the viewer about two different personalities, presumably her before and after her abuse. The two perspectives keep switching back and forth, showing how bad of a situation she is in now being trafficked for sex. The PSA ends with her turning on her back as the text "women enslaved by sex trafficking" lose more than just their names. It's quite disturbing, but honestly, over time I find this PSA less and less disturbing. It's only the visuals that makes it disturbing for me, but I can still see why it's a disturbing PSA for other people. It's just not really as much for me anymore. It still does disturb me, but not as much as it used to. Excuses. Excuses is a PSA released in 1992 from the NSPCC in the UK. It was a cinema-exclusive PSA only showing 15+ rated films. The PSA plays the song "Tell Me There's a Heaven" by Chris Rea, as we see text of excuses parents use for child abuse. After the excuses are seen, more text comes up countering the parents' excuses to cover up the abuse that they have done to their child. We see one final excuse parents use for how their child was injured, and after that we see how many other things that have happened to their child that only happen with long-term abuse. The text "there is never an excuse for abusing children" then comes up, as the PSA ends with the NSPCC's logo as well as their phone number. This is one that really gets to me. I had to rewatch all of these PSAs for the Iceberg, and damn, this one is really effective. It really makes me uncomfortable and actually really upset because I hate seeing that kids get abused like this. It's really a combination of everything from the music to the text and the images of children that we see in the PSA. It all adds up to something really upsetting and disturbing. That is the end of the Iceberg. I really hope you all enjoyed my video on this iceberg, which can actually be found in the description to the original Reddit post. Go check that out if you want to have a look at it. Anyways, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like, and if you enjoy my content, please make sure to subscribe as something special will be coming at 5k subs. Also, my Discord and Patreon are down below in the description if you want to check those out as well. And anyways, on to the Patreon shoutouts. Shout out to the fellow patrons. Shout out to Diamond Pony for signing up to my $2 PSA Pirate tier. Also, shout out to Nostalgic Unicorn, Madeline Stringer, and Juliet Wakefield for supporting my $5 Pusher tier. Shout out to the Monkey Sunky for supporting my $10 Pee Wee Herman tier. Lastly, massive shout out to Soy Sauce, EB Agent J, and Fatima for supporting my $25 Top Chef tier. If you want to find out how you can get your name at the end of my videos, make sure to check out my Patreon link on screen at the moment or in the description. Anyways, I shall catch you all in the next video.